Hey, what's up? My name is Arthur Weiner, and as a filmmaker and photographer, on this channel I share my knowledge and life hacks, so make sure you are subscribed. And today, I will show you how to correctly measure the exposure using an in-camera light meter. I'm sure that every aspiring photographer knows about the importance of setting the exposure correctly. Even if you shoot raw, it's not always possible to fix an incorrectly exposed photo in editing. As a result, information in dark and light areas will be lost. Many people claim that exposure metering in cameras does not work correctly, but this is completely not true. The thing is that modern cameras have several exposure metering modes, and depending on the situation, you need to select the most suitable one. So let's take a closer look at these modes and when each one should be used. By the way, depending on the camera brand, these modes can be called differently, so I won't dwell on precise naming. It's crucial to understand the principle of their work, and you'll have no problems no matter the camera you use. Multi-segment evaluative mode. Multi-metering is the default setting in any camera. This metering is based on the division of the entire shot into segments within which the exposure is measured. The average exposure of all these segments is used for the entire shot. In general, exposure evaluation is a rather complex process, and I don't want to dwell on it. It's much more important to understand how and when to use a certain mode. Multi-segment metering works best in landscape photography with even lighting. I personally use multi-metering 90% of the time, even if the lighting isn't quite even. Sometimes I switch to another mode to evaluate the exposure at a certain point. This is my way of doing things. Your approach may be completely different. Yet the need for a good photo editing tool is similar for all photographers. A well-shot image is, in general, only half of the battle. The perfect result can be achieved only with post-processing in the editor. Thus, it's very important to have the right software for this. I use PhotoWorks. This app satisfies the needs of both beginners and professional photographers. You can slightly change the exposure, apply color correction, or do more serious processing and remove unwanted objects. For example, I want to use new effects. I go to Effects, Effects Catalog, and select this in the menu. The library of effects is very diverse and their intensity can be adjusted. If you're satisfied with the results, it remains only to apply. In the description, you'll find links to the PhotoWorks app, which gives a 60% discount on full access to the editor. Center-weighted mode. As the name of this mode implies, only the center of the frame will be measured. It will be given all priority. The corners will be excluded from the measurement. Different manufacturers will have slightly different sizes of center areas, but the principle remains the same. This mode is ideal for shots like portraits when your subject is in the center of the frame. This way, the central object like face will be exposed correctly without accounting for the background. In scenes with complex lighting, multi-segment metering will show you the average exposure, which isn't ideal. Center-weighted metering in such situations will be more accurate. But remember, all measurements are done for the center of the frame, so pay attention to positioning your objects. There's a life hack though. You can adjust the exposure for when the object is in the center and then reframe everything. This way you will have a correct exposure and a desired composition. Spot metering. This mode allows measuring the exposure at a certain point. In my camera, by default, this point is located in the center, but I can always choose another point for measurement. Additionally, I can change the size of this point in settings from very small to large. It gives the opportunity to precisely measure the exposure for the exact object in the frame. I'm sure your camera also does that. Also, in my camera, there are a few additional modes. I can measure the exposure for the entire shot without dividing it into segments. And I can expose only bright areas, which eliminates overexposure. Depending on your camera's manufacturer, your set of modes may differ, so check your specifications to find out more. Now, when we've covered basic exposure metering modes, let's find out when you should use each one of them. If you have an evenly lit scene, the multi-metering is your best choice. This way you can preserve the information in the highlights and shadows while still properly exposing your subject. And this also works for portraits. If the scene has complex lighting and you want to focus on the object in the center of the frame, regardless of the background, you should use a center-weighted mode. When your lighting is even more complex and you want to highlight a specific point, then you should use spot metering. This can sound confusing in theory, so I suggest you take your camera and try different exposure modes in different lighting conditions. This way you will know exactly which mode suits you best in every situation. At the same time, you will be able to get to know your camera even better. Here is one more tip for you. No matter what mode you use, don't forget to check the histogram. It will show whether you've set your exposure correctly or not. Some photographers say that these metering modes work only in automatic and semi-automatic shooting modes. Again, not true. Even when shooting in manual, you will still see the measurements of the exposure, yet you will need to adjust it yourself. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope that it will now be easier for you to work with exposure metering modes. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel because we have a lot of interesting stuff here, and see you soon.